Okay, everybody, welcome to another Torq Moto podcast. This time we've got Rob Andrews in. We're going to talk to Rob in a minute.
Former Grand Prix rider.
Book
writer.
Yeah.
Author.
They reckon you...
Novelist.
Didn't listen to school, did I? But they reckon everybody's got a book in them. I haven't. I couldn't be
You've
bothered.
definitely got...
I couldn't be bothered, man.
Wobbs,
You have.
I'm telling you right now, some of the road trips we've been on is 3 chapters at least.
Yeah, you
For
could
those
write a
of
bit.
you that are watching and not listening, if you're listening, of course, fantastic that you are on Apple and Spotify. That's fantastic. Keep doing so. If you're watching us on YouTube and you're wondering what on earth's going on here, it's not like a little tip of the hat to Michael Jackson or anything like that. 'Cause I certainly don't have his moves, although I probably do look the same skin colour when he passed on. But look, I'm
not sure
these.
that's a bit of casual racism there from Jeffrey.
I'm wearing these for a reason, Wobbs.
Yeah, we've got a new sponsor,
to people
Docbright
why I'm wearing
gloves.
black latex gloves.
Docbright gloves. They're actually mega. I use them in the workshop all the time. They're really... the ones you buy from like Screwfix and whatever, you shove your thumb through them. They're horrible. But these work really good. Like, you could almost use them twice, but I don't. But they are really good. We use them doing filters, parts washer, all the horrible jobs when you're minging and you don't want to get it all in your fingernails and everything.
I'm sure
They're ace,
our
in fairness.
comments on the YouTube are going to probably light up at this point. I mean, when you said we could start this podcast and we got together, I never imagined that we'd pick up a sponsorship from a latex
But
glove.
they're called Docbright, so that fits well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And the shadow ones are black, but I haven't had any other colours.
We'll leave it there open for suggestion on your comments. I'm not going to go down that route,
No,
although
they're
I
good.
kind of did. And of course...
You've got a sweaty hand now.
Yeah. And of course, we wouldn't be doing this without Talon.
No, Talon Engineering.
Engineering, yeah. So thanks to those
Fine
guys.
British company.
It is.
Yes.
And they're back
Like
in the
quality
mix.
stuff, yeah. We're building all the bikes for, the Fox Hills and Farley races this year with all their stuff. So,
And until they tell us any different, we're still doing the 15% discount. So
yes, we are.
If you want Talon products at 15% cheaper, just go to their website or give them a call.
Speak to Simon.
And
He's
all
the
you
man
got to
there.
do is say Torq15 or quote Torq15, TORQ 15. That's it.
There you go. On a 600 or 700 quid set of wheels, that's a hell of a discount, isn't it?
So fair play to them for that. Right, we continue this wonderful trip down memory lane. I've been enjoying all of these because when we started this, Wobbs, we kind of knew that we were going to get an eclectic mix of people in.
Yeah.
And we still got a younger generation to get through, loads of people. But we're kind of in this lovely, excuse the terminology, 80s rut. And if you're going to be stuck in a nice rut to talk about motocross, 80s.
Yeah, I think.
So you fit the bill perfectly, Rob Andrews. There you go.
Yeah,
Sorry to make you feel old.
No, thanks for having me on. I mean, but yeah, 80s. It was probably the best era. I don't think we realised it at the time.
No, 90s for me.
You
I think.
You and
but
I go
that's
back
just-
a long way, like
Yeah.
40 years. But
Yeah,
it was a great era.
Late 80s, I was first involved, bumbling along. But for me, the 90s was, I enjoyed it when the 250s come along and the 125, you know what I mean? The 500s were, like those days back at the 500 Grand Prix was something else. That was, they were good times, there's no question. And like you say, you didn't realise how good they were till it's like school days, I suppose, isn't it?
It depends how old you are. I guess that this year is going to be the golden days for somebody in 30 years' time. It's what you grew up with.
I know it is, yeah. And I wonder whether these guys now see these superstars and they see them with such adoration as we did, with like you guys, Thorpe and Haken Carlquist and Joe Bay. These like gods amongst men, Whereas now everybody's following each other on Instagram and they all feel like they're involved and they can ask these guys questions directly. I don't know. It seems a bit of the spark.
Come on, Rob.
Are they getting answers directly, or they get answers from their
Doesn't
PR
matter.
people?
Yeah, PR people.
Whoever drives their Instagram account.
Yeah.
Right. Before, because we are going to talk a lot about 80s and we're going to finish talking about your book. We're going to bring that up towards the end because obviously that's great that you've done that. Before we really delve into the 80s, I want to come right up to speed where we are now. So is it fair to compare generations, do you think? Like the current because everybody does it. Nobody says, well, if this guy was racing that guy, can you actually do that? And how do you compare modern motocross to your era? Explain the fundamental
Some
differences,
people
Rob.
will say, the riders were better back in the 80s, but I don't think so. Good riders are good riders, whatever the era. The riders these days are doing things that the guys in the 80s couldn't do, but that's because they've learned how to do them. back then, nobody was doing scrubs. We didn't. If we'd known that you could do a scrub, I'm sure we would all be doing it. So I think the riders these days, they're great. The riders at the top level of the World Championship. Are they better than the riders back in the 80s? No, I don't think so. But it is really difficult to compare because they have techniques that the 80s riders didn't have access to. Nobody had invented them.
And better bikes as well. Let's not, like a modern four-stroke is such a good, reliable, good machine. To build a race bike out of a modern four-stroke's a day's work. Whereas back in the day, Jesus, it was like 40 hours to make a race bike out of a bike. I remember watching Hurlings a couple of years ago, before this accumulation of injuries that he's had, and watching him go around a sand track is one of the most impressive things I've ever seen. Yeah.
But I also watched the GP from Portugal at the weekend when it was muddy. Loved that. Loved mud races.
Yeah.
It levels the field.
It's great, so long as you're not a goggle guy or a mechanic. They're the two things.
I love watching that because it levels the field because those factory bikes don't have the advantage that they do on a hard track bike, hard track. But even so, I was watching those guys going round and thinking to myself, I don't think they're going any faster than we would have done back in the day because the bikes don't count for so much in those conditions.
No.
What about, obviously that's the rider side of it. What about the actual sport, as in regards to the marketing, the footfall, the people coming out? Evolution, everybody overlooks that and life evolves. And you've just highlighted that. Are the riders any better or worse? Probably not. The sport's just evolved. The technology's involved. So what about the actual sport, regards of the marketing and where we sit in mainstream?
Why are we getting like 15, 20 guys on the line? What's going on there?
Oh man,
yes, we're throwing these curveballs
but I mean,
it's such a
used to be
huge subject to address that we could sit here for a week and discuss it all.
That's why we want you to answer.
What do I think about the sport at the moment? You go to Matterley and you see all the big trucks and the presentation and everything. It looks great, and I kind of know what they've been trying to do, and you can't dispute that that's moved on.
That's impressive.
It is impressive, and all of the transporters and that sort of thing, and the money being spent. Other aspects of it aren't so good. I don't like the fact that there aren't enough riders on the line. I don't like the fact that there's no qualification, that you can just buy yourself a ride. And, let's be honest about this. A lot of those guys in the GP class are buying their rides.
Yeah.
Even some riders on factory teams are buying their rides. And I've always said it's, if somebody's got money or their family got money, it's not for me to tell them how they should or shouldn't spend it. If you want to go and buy yourself a ride in a team, then fine, but they should have to qualify to be on the line. Purchasing a ride in a team shouldn't guarantee you a space on the start line. There should be some sort of qualification.
No, but if you put yourself in the shoes of the team owner, team manager, they're all looking for the next big thing. So if you're a talent, you're going to get a deal, whether you've got any money or not. It's not a prerequisite you have to pay. They're all looking for your Conrad Muse or your Billy Askews, or they're all looking for that kid to be like spearhead the team. They might have a second tier guy who's paying to be there, which helps fund the lot, but they are all looking for the skill. So it's not just on paying. You need to, if you go out there and start riding quick and start winning, you're going to get a deal. It's just the way it is. You've got to be an absolute idiot to screw that up because it's all about the speed, and that's what everybody wants.
You can't argue over the fact that the riders at the top level of GPs are very good. And we've seen that with how they've competed against the Americans over the years. That always used to be the yardstick, didn't it?
Yeah.
Europeans were always behind the Americans. So there's no doubting the talent. But it's just such a complex subject. You could just take one aspect of it and talk about that for several hours.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. It's like we spoke to Mark Chamberlain, and he had a good point, believe it or not. It's like he said, it's not like the line's full of French and Dutch kids. It's not England that's the problem. It's global. There's not enough people coming through of the level who even want to race. You go to the practice tracks, they're rammed.
Yeah.
But you can't tell somebody, look, you need to practice to race because racing is racing, and like the practice tracks are full, but they're not getting the full enjoyment out of it if you never race.
And I don't understand why it's come to that point where there's lots of people riding, but nobody wants to race.
No. I think it's value for money. I think
that's what I'm saying. Is it society? Like I said, we can talk about it loads, but the value for money, maybe what you get out of it now, like you can pay your 40, 50 pound, whatever it is to go and ride. And you can get probably more riding in now on a weekend with your mates going practicing than you would by the time you've paid your license and travelled further and entry fees more. You might end up paying 120 quid, say, before you've even turned a wheel, and you'll get 3 15-minute races. So maybe people are like...
I think that's what it is. I think it's time on the bike. But, I mean...
And if you race, you've got to be there at 7:30 in the morning. You don't get away until 7 o'clock at night.
Yeah. And you were sitting around waiting a lot of the time.
What about this then, Rob? I've often thought, more so recently as well, talking about the evolution of the sport, you know, we're all passionate about it, clearly, and hopefully everybody watching the podcast. Are we got kind of blinkers on with that? By what I mean by that is trying to maybe make it a mainstream sport when it's just or simply maybe never going to be that, and we just need to accept it's more of a niche thing. You touched on America. They do Supercross and do it very well. Obviously, they introduced that in 72, and their sport kind of
72, that's to you, like...
Yeah, well, I know that was the year I was born.
Oh, it's impressive.
Not that I knew that.
No, that is impressive. I couldn't tell you what year they started.
You know, and they kind of, the marketing, the TV, so they got more chance of sort of getting, and of course in America, they're more geared up towards petrol and motorsports, aren't they? So...
Mind you, I know a few team managers have told me over the years that it's more important to win one Supercross than an outdoor national championship.
Yeah, that's so what I'm getting at
ridiculous
is
as it sounds.
We keep saying about getting more people into it, more commercial sponsorship, all those things, but is it ever going to compete with other motorsports and other certainly mainstream sports in Europe like tennis, football, etc.?
I don't think it ever will be a mainstream sport. It's always been a niche sport, and I think it always will be. I don't know why they like Supercross so much in America. It's a different society, isn't it?
It's a different sport to a degree.
Different sport.
But they'll sit and watch monster trucks the following week.
You know, and I'd like to go and watch a monster truck.
You never seen
I've
them?
never
They are
seen it.
mental.
But when I go to the States, I'd love to go and watch one just because, you know, why not? And I'd like to watch a baseball game.
Oh, God, that's awful. Don't ever do that.
And that sort of thing. But I'd like to see it.
Oh, baseball is the most boring. I thought cricket was bad, but baseball is awful. American football's all right, but American football, you sit there wondering why they stopped. And they stopped because of the adverts on the TV.
If anybody wants to buy Wobbs a baseball cap or a baseball top,
baseball is a no-no.
Choose a team for him.
Baseball's a no-no. I tried it, went to Tampa or something, sat there and watched it, and I'm like...
Well, we had rounders at school, didn't we? Same thing,
isn't it? Same thing, yeah. I only have the World Series held on one weekend. Be world champion.
I love the way we just basically tar that the same brush.
Let's drag this back to motocross.
Sorry.
What was the question?
Can't remember.
The question was about taking it mainstream. You know, is it ever going to be?
I don't think it'll be mainstream.
I think if it went mainstream, would have the arse anyway.
You know, one of my gripes is that the changes that they've made to the sport in the GPs, they seem to have wanted to try to make it appeal to a new audience, to bring in new fans, but have changed the very fabric of the sport, and in so doing has pissed off their existing audience. And so the old school fans don't like it anymore.
Be honest, how often do you watch it? Do you watch every GP religiously? Do you watch the highlight reel?
No, I will. It'll totally depend on the track. If it's a sand track, that one in Sardinia a couple of weeks ago, you know, I follow all the results. I certainly don't watch it religiously.
No.
If it's going to be a good track, I will watch it. If it's one of these tracks in Indonesia or China or wherever they're going, I won't even watch the highlights. I'll just look at the results because I've got no interest in watching a track like that. With sand, you know you're going to get good racing. To me, that's what I'm interested in, is seeing good racing. And what I mean by good racing is overtaking. That's why I like the mud races, because you never know who's going to win. No. Things can happen. In a mud race and on a sand track, you can lose like 3 or 4 seconds a lap just like that, and you can put a big effort in and gain 3 or 4 seconds like that. If you go on one of these cookie cutter tracks, they're all going the same speed.
Yeah.
And the synchronized jumping, I don't like that. So
I must admit, I mean, like a rhythm section, it penalises you for going too fast or too slow. You've got to go a certain speed to do it properly. So they're basically limiting what speed everybody's going to go through that section.
What I don't understand, you know, I'm sort of known on social media as speaking out against the jumpy cookie cutter tracks, but what I don't get is how those same sort of jumpy tracks can work in Supercross.
Yeah.
You do get passing in Supercross. You do get exciting races in Supercross, which leads me to think that it's not just jumps that is the problem, because it's working in Supercross. So somebody needs to look at it and actually figure out. And I try to do this. I went to, was it San Diego or one of those races? And, there was passing there. And I try to look at it and think, okay, why is there passing here? Why are those riders able to pass there? It must be something to do with the shape of the corner, the shape of the track, creating different lines, because they were passing even though there's jumps. Yeah. So you can't just say that a jumpy track isn't good for passing. Maybe it's something to do with the fact that it's slower corners.
But they've started sticking in sand sections and all kinds of weirdness now, haven't they?
I don't know whether that is specifically it. You get passes in corners.
Yeah.
And I think maybe it's because it's slower speed. So they're coming in slower, they can kind of handbrake it and turn back up the inside. Whereas if you transfer that to an outdoor track and it's faster speeds, you can't handbrake it at 40 miles an hour.
Yeah. No. I think that is a valid point. Also, maybe the duration. With a Supercross race,
15 laps, 20 laps.
Yeah, you just, it's so intense that you just got to make moves early. Where that traditional motocross duration, you go quick early doors.
The racing back in the day when
it
it was 40 minutes plus 2 laps was ace. And now it seems to be like
it's
a
easy
bit
for you to say.
It's great to watch, mate. You know what I mean?
I enjoyed the first about 25 minutes, and then I particularly didn't enjoy the next 15. I enjoyed it when the 2-lap board came out. I got to be honest.
There would have been boring, tedious races back in the day as well. We always remember the good ones, don't we? We remember the races where there was a great battle for the lead. If the tracks were better, in inverted quotes, back in the 80s, why were they better? Yeah. That's what I think is the question that people should be asking, as in the organisers, the promoters. Why do people think those tracks were better? People on social media will say, there's no hills these days. But hills on its own isn't just the answer.
Yeah.
Grass isn't just the answer. It's more complicated than that. But we need to figure out, you can go to modern GP tracks and you'll find sections where you do get passing. And I would always look at it and think, why are we getting passing there? What is it about that particular section that's enabling someone to set up a pass there? And I often think, well, you need to design a track so that the fastest line is susceptible to a block pass.
I also think, in my opinion, like you just said about the tracks, back then, also the tracks didn't get groomed so much between sessions and stuff like that.
But the bikes didn't have the suspension they've got now, and they get so dug up now.
So it's both. So you naturally changed that line because the track wasn't getting groomed each session. So when you go out on a lot of modern tracks now, they kind of groom them over again. So by the time you go back out, you're straight back on that same line. It hasn't really got overly rough. Track like Hawkstone, back in the day, like
Hawkstone doesn't get as bumpy as it used to.
No, but what I'm saying is it used to get, that wasn't out there and being groomed between races or anything and put it down. So you'd have to make more lines.
Line choice is not a thing anymore. You look at some of those old videos of Unadilla, that was bumpy as hell, You had to actually pick a line, go from one side of the track to the other, find the smoothest line. And I remember when I first went in adult racing, it was like that. That was part of the craft, that you needed to pick the fastest line through a section. Whereas today, it doesn't really matter where you go.
Farley's a good example. Let's talk about like that. When you look at Farley, if you're not racing a bike, you think, well, it's not.
It looks easy, doesn't it?
It doesn't. There's no obstacles. It's not really that rough.
No.
You and I both know when you come down the staircase and you turn right and you go through that. Oh my days!
It's bumpy.
It is bumpy.
But
when your kidneys are taking, it's like you are being punched in the back all the way through that section.
It wasn't as bumpy back in the day as it is now. It's because you've got however many hundred riders going around there at the VMXDN.
Yeah.
I don't know. We used to get good racing at Farley. Was it because back then we had some genius looking at the design of the track and the shape of the corners? No, I don't think so. I think they set tracks out then like they do now. Is one bloke just walks around and goes, oh, well, we'll turn left there and then we'll go up that bit and then turn right. And I think more can be made of that. I think just by
maybe the bikes are so good and it kind of levels out the fact that, the bike is really capable. And, the guys with the factory bikes had the good stuff and the privateers were trying to make the best of what they had. And now I think, like I say, the bikes... For me, even production stock stuff is so good now.
Yeah, evolution's a good thing. As I said, the bikes and the riders are so talented. I'm with you to a degree, Rob. I just think, seeing more riders on a line, regardless of whether they're racing at the sharp end or not, would just make more of a spectacle.
But I mean, it used to be
that.
like 3 groups to qualify. Do you remember those days? You know what I mean? It was mental trying to get in.
We used to have anywhere up to 120 riders
Trying to
enter
qualify.
a Grand Prix, and then those riders would qualify on the Saturday to take it down to 40 plus 2 reserves.
Yeah.
So we always had 40 in the lineup. Is 40 riders better than 30? I mean, does it make any difference that the supporters of the modern motocross will say, well, we're only looking at the guys up the front anyway, so who cares? It's another thing, isn't it? It'd be nice to have a full lineup. I think it's if one of the top riders gets a bad start, it's a lot harder to come through from 40th than it is to come through from 20th.
Yeah.
I don't think
sometimes have to do
for TV. I don't think it matters. That's proven like MotoGP because they focus on the front guys anyway. I think anybody attending the event to have 40 on the line and all going into the first corner.
Yeah, I think it
gives it a bit more.
It's what we all grew up with and what we all love is, the adrenaline. But it's just, don't know, why not? I mean, it's a big question, like you say. You've only got to see in Belgium, they're closing all the tracks and it's expensive to do, you know? And like the cost of the bikes, like Triumph just come out at 10 grand. You're like, I hope they sell them. It's a lot of money.
I just wanted your take on that because as I said, you don't mind admitting that you've occasionally get on social media there and get that off your chest a bit. So I thought let's get it off in the show.
I raced back in the day in an era that a lot of people think was one of the best eras for motocross.
Yeah.
I'm not involved in the sport anymore. I just look in from the outside. I think I've got valid opinions. And I don't have any links to anybody in the sport, so it makes no difference to me if I speak out about it. I don't have all of the answers at all. I wouldn't want to run the GPs. I haven't got
your name forward.
I haven't got the solutions to all of this, but I just watch it, and some people just focus on the negatives. They'll say, "Isn't this crap?" No, I can see the positives as well. But I think certain changes could be made, certainly with the tracks, in the interest of better racing, that wouldn't cost anything and would make it better.
I mean, like you say, the infrastructure, the health and safety and all that is so much better than it ever was.
Great, but don't use that as a reason why you can't have a decent track.
No.
I don't know whether you know this, I met with Giuseppe Luongo years ago down at Matterley to try and talk to him about track design. Because I put to him, this is when we were going to Qatar. So even Qatar, okay, I understand why you need to go there, and it's flat and it's a god-awful place, but I still think I could design a better track that would make exciting racing. And he was kind of half interested in it, and he said, okay, yeah, we'll do it. But nothing came of it. But I think changes could be made to tracks, not just here, in America as well, that would make passing easier. And if you've got passing, you're going to get exciting racing. And I think that would improve it. And that's not going to cost anything.
No. Then you might come out to more events. But you still go to quite a lot, don't you?
No, not in this country.
No?
I'm away most of the winter. We spend most of the winter in California these days.
It has been noted on your social media.
So I went to a couple of supercrosses last time I was away this past winter. But, I've been to a lot of races. So I'm not really... If I was here, I'd probably go down to the Nations at Matterley, but we're going to be away again. But I've seen a lot of races, so I'm not that enthusiastic to actually drive 3 hours and stand out all day watching them.
When was the last time Rob Andrews rode a motocross bike with any degree of anger?
Still got a CR500, haven't you? Still got
I've got a CR500. I've got a 2015 KTM 450.
Yes, you have. I forgot that.
Which I'm embarrassed to say. So what's that? Is that 8 years old now? 8 years old now. It's got 18 hours on it.
It's not exactly. That sounds like Boris's practice bike back in the day.
He won't mind saying we're going to get him on.
So the last time I raced in anger would have been the VMXDN at Farley in 2012. So I did race that in the twin shop.
Yeah, raced that down. Remember that.
Reacquainted myself with Roost and diving into a first corner with 40 other riders. So that was the last bigger race that I did. When I bought this KTM, I did do a couple of local vets class with the Cotswold Schoolboys. And that was it really. And I won that vets class and then came home and thought, I don't feel any great level of satisfaction for doing that. I've been out all day. I've won my 3 10-minute races, didn't get a trophy. What happened to trophies? When I raced in the school,
Don't you
got
get
a
trophies
trophy
anymore?
No trophies.
Don't you?
You might get like a little plaque, like a little plastic.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Not many
apart
do
That's a
trophies
travesty.
Yeah, not many do trophies anymore.
Didn't
So
know
apart
that.
from that, I haven't ridden for years and years and years, and so I'm incredibly rusty. And so if I do go out on a bike on one of these parade lap things like you have at Fox, and I did one at Whiteway Barton last year, I just feel embarrassingly slow.
It's a parade lap, Rob. We both did
I
that
know,
parade
it's a-
lap. You don't have to
Driving
go
around
quick on
waving
that
at people.
parade
No,
lap.
but it's like
You were there.
you know the feeling,
Yeah.
Jeff, that you ride that bike and you think
Oh,
it
yeah.
just feels alien. I feel like
Does.
I've never ridden a bike before. And I have to remind myself that hey, I used to be quite good at this.
Just to bring that up, Whiteway Barton. We both did that parade lap. I hadn't ridden there for a long time. But obviously, I used to ride down that part of the world. And the far hill, the deer, where they got the fence next to the deer park, plopped off on that parade lap. And I was thinking, I don't ever recall this hill being like this, that steep, or this jump being that. Like, I was like, what's going on here? They've surely made that bigger. And it wasn't until I came in, so my brother said, no, that's way smaller than what it used to be. They've tamed that right down. You're kidding. And I sort of went down there, just both brakes on. Like you said, only a parade lap, but thinking, I can't believe we used to launch down this hill with not even a thought. Just
No, well, it's like Fox Hill, isn't it? Them hills are mental, aren't they?
Oh.
And when you see them boys launching off the top, you're like, not right, man.
But back in the day, if I could transport my mind back to then, I remember just popping off the top, and you're thinking, no problem to jump down here. Just don't want to jump to the flat.
Yeah.
But you're quite happy to let that bike float all the way to the bottom and land a couple of meters before
And
it.
give yourself a bit of braking.
And you know exactly what the bike's going to do and how far it's going to jump for a certain speed, and that's the feeling that you've got when you're doing it all the time.
Yeah, what got me was like sat at the top of that, and I couldn't see it. It was just like you riding off a cliff.
Yeah.
And I was looking like this, and I'm like, that's not me. I can't do that.
no.
Is that upside down?
What's upside down? Oh no, with the glove box. No,
Oh no.
just.
I wish I
shameless-
could find a box that's not open, but I do use them, as you can see.
That's what he's been using them. So again, just another shout out to these guys. That are getting-
Docbright gloves.
Yeah, nothing to do with you.
No, shadow version, black ones. They are mega.
So if you're fettling about in your workshop
yeah.
or whatever,
we
whatever
don't-
you feel you need to use latex gloves for, they're the people you need to speak to.
Air filter gloves. And then I don't like get my hands greasy anymore. Look.
No, tell that. Rob, when was the last time? I said the last time you rode a bike in anger. I asked most riders this because I'm intrigued because it happened to me. When we all start this wonderful journey of riding bikes, and we can always kind of remember that starting moment. I'm always pretty much more fascinated in the end, actually, and like how it evolves and how you know it's coming. How did it happen for you? When did those little seeds of doubt start thinking, I've maybe got to start winding this down? Or how did you tackle that?
Well, firstly, let me just say that the end is the bigger decision
Yeah.
than starting.
Yeah, it is.
Because when you're racing and you're doing it and it's your passion and your job and you're racing every week and you're going all around the world doing it, it's a huge decision to say, I'm going to stop doing this, because that's all you've done to the exclusion of everything else for a long time. So for me, I actually, when I wrote my book, I spent a lot of time thinking about this, and it was a nice process actually to do that book, because it made me stop and think about things that I hadn't thought about before and hadn't spent much time actually really worrying about them. But for me, I made the decision to stop when I came to the realization that I'd got as good as I was going to get, and I'd achieved as much as I was going to achieve. From when I first started, I kept getting gradually better. Not always. Sometimes my progression would stop, or I felt it was going backwards, but I just kept going better and better. And I put everything I'd got into it, and I tried really hard and tried to be as good as I could at this sport. But towards the end of my career, I had injuries and bad luck and that sort of thing, and my results tailed off. Now I've written the book and actually sat down and analysed that, I can see some patterns in there as to why those results tailed off, and the amount of bad luck I had and concussions and things like that. But it was the realisation that I don't think I'm going to get any better from this point.
Did the book help you with that? As in, help you almost acceptance that you've got no regrets and you're satisfied with everything you've done once you put it all down in words and on paper?
Yes, I've got no regrets at all. I worked as hard as I possibly could, and I tried my best to be as good as I could. And I got to the level that I did, which was here, and it wasn't up there, but it was, for those that don't know, I made the top 10 in the 500 World Championship in '86.
Well, that's when it was loaded, wasn't it? I mean, the names,
there
my
was
God.
like 9 world champions racing there. So it was a very tough year. And the first GP that year I had tied second overall. So for a week I was second in the World Championship. So that was my best year. I had a second in a GP leg in '87. But then '88...
Germany.
In Germany, in the mud.
Yeah, that was money.
Talk to you about mud a bit more in a second. But no, 88, 89, my results, I was probably being a bit harsh on myself, because I would just, at the end of the year, look back and say, okay, you've finished worse position in the rankings than you did the previous year. That was shit. And the year after that, you're going down. And so I thought, I'm not going to get any better. And I didn't want to just continue riding and get worse and worse and worse and keep riding around at the back. And so I decided to stop. But as fate would have it, in my last GP, I actually got a 5th in the second moto. In my last British Championship, I had a 2nd in the first moto at Foxhill. And so I kind of finished on a high. But that didn't make me change my mind. That,
You'd already made your mind up. It wasn't like...
No, I'd already made my mind up probably halfway through that last year.
Yeah.
You had like a young family, and that takes, that does take the edge off, because they come priority. You get sleepless nights, and there's things which come more that, all of a sudden the priorities change, don't they?
I'm thinking, why am I doing this? I did it to see how good I could get at motocross.
Yeah.
I didn't do it to make money. Money doesn't motivate. You've got to want to do it. I did it to see how good I could get at this sport. When I started, I didn't know I was going to be any good at it at all. But that's the reason I put all the effort in and the sacrifice into riding world championships, because I wanted to keep improving and see where I could get to.
So that was the aspiration. You didn't set targets. You didn't go,
I'm going to be world
I'm going to
champion.
be world. You want one of these, I'm going to be world champion, I'm going to be world champion, or I'm going to be... It was almost like a football manager, one game at a time, one season at a time.
Yeah, for me, I just wanted to keep improving. And to be honest, at pretty much every point during my career, I'm like, I can't believe I'm this good. Wow, I've got I've scored points in a British Championship. I never thought I'd get this good. And then I end up in GPs. And wow, I've scored points in GPs. Wow, I've got a top 5. And I was always kind of surprised that I'd got as good as I could get.
Were you ever starstruck with the guys you're lining up with? Because you were up with the heavy hitters. You were lining up with the big names.
Not once I was on the start line with them. I was a fan growing up as well. And so I would look at Hook and Carquist and Malherbe and Gabors and people like that. And, you place them on a pedestal. When I actually got up to race with them and you end up parking next to them in the pits, then no.
That's when you kind of
really.
find out that then they're human like everybody else. And I certainly did. That's what I did when I was racing GPs. You just kind of realise that they're just the same, better, but the same, going out and and they're just hardworking guys that they're there to enjoy the experience. And
belief is so much of the sport. And as you're coming up and you start to beat people. So let's say I was coming up in the British Championship, and the British Championship riders I also will put on a pedestal. But one day you end up beating them. And then in your mind, it's like it's ticked off. Okay, I can beat him. Must be the same for you, Jeff. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. And that kept going up. And then you get into GPs and you think, I can beat that guy and I can beat that guy. And Malherbe, don't know if I can beat Malherbe. And I talk about this in my book, that I think the champions, they're able to go to that start line convinced in their own mind that they can beat those guys. And I'm honest enough to say in my last chapter in my book, I talk about this, about what I learned and what would I do different if I had my time again. And those guys seem to be able to go to the start line convinced that they can beat whoever it is on the start line. And I didn't have that same belief in myself. I went to the start line hoping I would win and wanting to win, but I didn't go to the start line thinking, I can beat Andre Malherbe. I went to the start line hoping to beat Andre Malherbe.
Yeah.
I beat Torq on a couple of occasions, but I didn't line up behind alongside Torq thinking, I can beat this guy. I'm thinking, I'll try to beat him.
Yeah.
Whereas other guys, I'm trying to think of names.
Russ Jarman.
Pardon?
Russ Jarman.
Russ Jarman.
I thought I'd throw that one out.
Okay, you said that, not me.
Bit of left field.
So somebody like Russ, you think, I know I can beat Russ.
Yeah.
And Russ was really fast,
Yes,
but that's
he
all
was.
part of the belief thing as you go up.
Yeah.
And it must be the same with boxers. Boxers go into that ring convinced that they're going to win that fight, and that's why when they do get their head kicked in, they often retire because that self-belief has been shattered. And so if those guys like Torq go to that line convinced that they can beat them, where does that come from? How do they convince themselves that they can beat those guys?
I guess
I convinced myself that I could beat, you say, Russ Jarman, only because when we came up, Russ finished behind me. But how do you do that with the best riders in the world? I don't know. Is it something they're born with?
I think it's got. I believe that. It's just
Or do you
everybody's
just-
different characters, isn't it? I think I relate to what you're saying. That's pretty much how I did it for me. My career was just concentrate on me, just keep getting better. I never had like targets saying I've got to be here or there by that year. Just keep improving, and wherever that takes me.
But this is another thing in that final chapter. I bumped into Jared Smith.
I saw that.
He'd be a good guy to get on here.
Yeah, he would
found
be a
it.
good guy.
I found Jared Smith.
You didn't bump into him.
I went and tracked him down after
Yeah.
25 years, and he said to me, so apologies if you've already read this, he said to me, Rob, have you ever wondered why you weren't world champion? And I said, I guess because I wasn't fast enough. And he said, no, I disagree. And he'd thought long and hard about this in respect to his own career, and he said that he concluded that he wasn't world champion because he didn't believe that he could be. And it really made me stop and think. And he went on to give Joel Smets as an example. Because when Joel first started in GPs, Jared and I would beat him easily. But he went on to win 5 world championships. And Jared was convinced that it was just because he truly believed that he could be
You could do it.
a world champion. And then not long, literally a couple of days after I'd seen Jared, Torq rang me for a chat one day. And I mentioned what Jared had said. And he said, yeah, Greg Hansen's another one. Because in British Championships, Greg could beat Torq fair and square, and did. In 86, he was the one rider to beat Torq in Thorpe's otherwise clean sweep of every race of the British Championship. And David said he remembered asking Keith, whose picture is right in front of me there, asking Keith about Greg Hansen. And Keith said, because when Greg's at home, he believes that he can beat you. When he goes to GPs, he can't. Because Greg was nowhere near as fast in GPs.
No, but same
So
for
it's
Conrad
up here.
Peters now without throwing, like Conrad, fastest kid in the world. But he gets on a ferry and his head goes. I don't know why.
Conrad's a good...
Because this kid's so fast.
Yeah.
Well, he proved that last weekend at Ling.
Oh, yeah, the kid's more than capable.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah, with Greg in particular. And Greg could ride anything, couldn't he? Like, he'd be equally as good on a 125, 250 or 500. So he clearly had the natural.
Yeah, no, Greg's a good rider.
It's so mental, and as in a mental sport. Because in GPs or in any championship, I suppose, the difference between the guys at the front and the guys at the back is not that great. And I say this in my book as well. In GPs, we were all pretty even, if we're honest. The difference between the first place guy and the guy that's finishing last is a fraction of a second here or there. There were no slow riders in a GP. Everybody was good. So what is the difference between those guys that are coming 40th and the guys that are winning? How do they make those fractions of a second here and there? It's nothing.
No.
And so much of it is in your mind.
Yeah. That's elite sport. That's what makes it so appealing.
And having a factory Honda.
And having a factory.
It doesn't do any harm,
Yeah.
does it?
Yeah. You had some, not quite as good as bikes that, but you had some good bikes. Just before we get into talking more about your career, just don't forget, if you're watching and if you're listening, Talon, if you want some 15% off, don't forget to ring up, email, or just quote Torq15 and get yourself 15%
Triple
off.
clamps and hubs and all that goodness.
Yeah,
We're going to be going down there
they
for
got
their
a big
50th
thing
anniversary.
Yeah, big thing in September for their 50th anniversary. Yeah, 50
I believe
years
so.
of British
Engineering, fine engineering.
So we're all about that. That's good. You must have used Talon at some point. Please say you did. Otherwise,
Yeah, that's gonna
that's
make us
It
look
was
terrible.
Talon, and my
a
personal CR500 has some
go.
Talon wheels.
There
you go.
See, one thing I always found racing GPs was obviously not just the racing. That's what you're there to do. But what a lifestyle, particularly in the 80s, I should imagine. I mean, there's some, obviously in your book, there's some great stuff. We'll talk about the book in a minute, stories off the track, etc. Did that make it harder to pull the plug on a riding career? With all the memories and all the good times that you've had? But I guess we all get old and we can't party forever.
It don't feel that much fun at the time.
No, but
that's
looking
my
back,
experience.
it does.
But looking back, it feels great. But
that's an interesting thing for you to say. I mean, firstly, it was never a party. Certainly not for me.
No. No, I didn't mean literally party. I meant, in your 20s, you've got more
you put
energy.
up with all of that stuff, don't you? I mean, I wouldn't want to go camping these days. I'm sorry. I wouldn't want to go around Europe in a van. But,
So you'd fly. You'd be a fly guy now, would you? Definitely.
I probably wouldn't want to do the travelling. I'm going to Namur this year, actually, in July, and we are driving there.
Excellent.
No, it was all one thing. That was our life. We raced motocross. It was pretty much 12 months a year, 7 days a week, and we were off and we would be living in the van a lot of the time, and we were off to the races, and that's what we did. And so when you make that decision to stop, it's just you're stopping that entire thing.
Yeah.
And you're kind of you're losing your friends as well, because I did that for a number of seasons, and you get to know some of the people. We made some good friendships there. And at my last GP, that was kind of tinged with sadness a little bit, because it's not only that I'm stopping racing, but we're maybe not going to see any of these people again. No. And so there's that comes into it. But the opposite thing to that is that I do remember when I stopped racing, how thrilled I was that I was going to be at home at a weekend, that I wasn't going to be away, that actually I've got nothing on this week. I haven't got to be racing somewhere, driving countless hours to some far-off race somewhere.
That French International, I mean, they were mental, them French Internationals. The amount of those we used to do in a year.
Yeah, we were racing pretty much every week. I don't remember.
Like 35, 40 times a year.
In between.
I don't remember ever having a weekend off without racing. We were either a GP or a British Championship or a French International or some British National. Yeah. I can't remember.
But then French Internationals, you've got a Tuesday, and you get there into this empty field on a Monday night, knackered from the British Championship. Wake up in the morning and there's 30,000 people in there.
Well, it would be a bit more like a current speedway rider or speedway riders. You were taking on midweek events, weren't you? There was more of them.
There were a lot more races.
Start money and all those kind of things.
We'd race at Halstead, Wakes Colne, British Championship on Easter Sunday, and then after the race we'd load up, we'd collect the prize money, and then we'd drive all the way down to Prix.
Yeah, it's a long way.
Which is a long way. So you'd have to drive down to Dover, catch the boat, get off the other side, and then drive another 4 or 5 hours to the track. So we'd get there at 4 o'clock in the morning. And in my last year, I was doing that on my own with Claire. I didn't have a mechanic, so I was driving all the way. Claire wouldn't drive the truck. But even in previous years, you're still sharing the driving with the mechanic, and you're not sleeping. So, but that's what we did. That's what we did. So we didn't complain about it. That's what you do.
No, that's what you do.
Easter just gone. We used to ride at Matcham's Park, which was Ringwood, on the Friday. Then we drive back home to Worcester, where I live, Friday night. Saturday, we then drive all the way up to Cumbria, to Bootle for the British Championship on Sunday. And then Sunday, we drive all the way from Bootle down to Frome in Somerset. So those 3 races. So Good Friday, Easter Sunday, Easter Monday. That's what we did. Yeah. We never.
Do you think now, for example, the cost of the fuel, and there's no prize money, and it just all compounds to be not viable, just not worth doing?
Yeah, you'd cover your fuel costs. You couldn't make.
You can't now, though, can you?
No, not now.
The fuel's gone through the roof, and there's no prize money. So how'd you do that? And I used to get 1,000 Swiss francs to qualify for a world championship if you didn't get any. And the money used to go down to 20th, did it?
25th when I was racing.
25th in GPs.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was when you were, but yeah, certainly.
So
well outside
the points, you're still getting paid.
Yeah.
It's funny how
as long as you qualify.
Remember where the prize money ended.
As long as you qualify, you didn't get anything if you didn't qualify.
No. Yeah. And it was always in Swiss francs, which was random, trying to figure out how much money that was.
Yeah, I remember those days.
And you needed half a dozen different types of currencies
on
the way there.
Well, they did, yeah. And I mean, you'd have this big jar of coins on the dash of the van.
Oh, yeah.
And then like navigating around, I remember me and you going, you're saying, well, Vienna's down here. And I'm like, I am not seeing Vienna for about 2 hours, looking at every map in the world. I said, I can only see Wien.
That's it.
And that's how you spell Vienna on a map.
Oh,
who knows?
fantastic.
And I remember we were driving down the road and I see like a white United Nations truck pass us. And I'm thinking, oh, we lost. Are we headed to like somewhere north?
Somewhere you shouldn't be.
Kosovo or something.
Yeah, I was thinking, oh, this isn't good.
Of course, it wasn't open Europe then, was it? Like, like every border.
No mobile phone, no credit cards even. You had to pay cash.
Yeah.
And then all the carnets. If people don't understand what carnets were, that was a serious
Can you imagine? Like we even obviously used to stop even going from France into Belgium. So you got off the ferry, you'd only do like, what was it, 45 minutes and you'd have to stop at the Belgian border.
There's a risk
trade with stickers, motocross stickers, that would get you through, and posters.
There's a high risk of us sounding like old men here.
Brilliant. That's what we are, Rob.
Well, that's what it is. But you don't realise how easy it is now. And like the bikes are so reliable. Everything's easy. Like, you know, they're all online. And not for us. We were out there. Like, if you wanted to ring home, you had to go to a hotel.
Yeah, call box on the side of the road.
Yeah. And ring it, fire a load of money.
This is rubber stamping the whole thing of why, it was time to... It's like the way he doesn't miss it. Yeah, actually,
everything was harder, but it
was hard.
But you know, it was also a lot of fun. We always used to be at all the campsites, and I'm sure that still happens, but not with the riders. I think maybe the mechanics, but I don't think the riders are on board. Like it used to be, like your Kurtz and your Thorpes would fly in, and the rest of us would be like a convoy going from race to race.
But it was new for us, wasn't it? You know, we were 18, 19, 20 or whatever. And wow, how exciting! I'm going to the south of France to ride my bike.
Proper winging it, though, weren't we?
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus, trying to figure out how to work the tolls and work the petrol pumps and having enough money. No fast food. I remember going into a petrol station and drinking the water you put in a battery because that's all I could find.
So with that in mind, do you, well, it's true.
In Italy, I think it was.
Totally,
I was like, I want a drink. And I'm like, they got nothing. I got no money to put in the vending machine. So I'm like, a bottle of distilled water, that'll do me.
So here we are, all middle-aged men. Would you say that was like a better life education, getting out on the road than having a 9-to-5 job, staying at home? I mean, we were... Let's be honest, we've all learned quite a lot of life hacks.
Oh, very much so.
I know you certainly have.
Very much so, yeah. And I mean, like, now when I...
Because it shapes your personality.
I did what I did, and then you go out with your family and everything's not a drama.
I think this. I often think, like, if I hadn't have raced motocross and gone and travelled Europe, would I be the same guy now?
No, I don't think so.
Not at all. I don't think I would be.
I can't imagine my children, my daughters, going and doing something like that at that age.
No.
But, that's what we did. We got a van, we got a race in the south of France. My dad wasn't going to come and hold my hand. It's, that's where we need to go. Get a map, figure it out.
Yeah.
Figure out the problems as you encounter them.
Yeah.
And so it was an education, which... It's an education in life, isn't it?
Yeah. It's no different to when I remember I used to work for Mark Banks and Justin, and we used to listen to John and Dave Bickers talking, and they were a generation before. And
at least they'd done it. They knew some of the hacks.
Oh my God, they were doing when it was like the Eastern, Eastern Europe and all that was sketch. I mean, like when we were racing going into East Europe was sketchy.
The wild, wild East.
Oh my God. No, it is though. It's
proper, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, some of the situations you found yourself in are proper dangerous, aren't they? Yeah. They are proper dangerous.
Well, I can remember Vic Eastwood telling me a good few. I'm not repeating them, but like how he would go in a car, in a trailer with Scott and Mark in the back, like a couple of kids out to Russia. Mad.
So we should talk about the book. We've done nothing but talk about the book.
Hold on, I'm going to grab it. So those viewing, obviously those listening, won't see it, but there you go.
It's a proper good read.
It is. Look, proper hardback. All nicely done, Rob. There you are on the front, looking mean and moody.
It's a really good book.
It's called The Inside Line. Great title. So, sell it, Rob. I mean, I'm just gonna look at some of these great pictures here as well while you're talking. Yeah.
No,
you know what I mean. You know what I mean, because you've put a lot of heart and soul into this.
I did put my heart and soul in that. There's no other book like it. Summary of that, it tells you what it was really like to be racing in the 500 Grand Prix back in the day. It's a story of my career, of how I went from a very late start in motocross Started off as a no-hoper, but just kept pushing on and eventually ended up as a factory rider, Motocross to Nations rider, and top 10 in the 500 GPs. It's 400 pages, and every one of them is a colour page. So it's not your normal autobiography that's printed on toilet paper. It's beautifully illustrated on every page as you go through.
It's a really
some
good
amazing photos in there.
Yeah,
it's a good read.
I mean, that's the thing as well. Obviously, your storytelling is fantastic, but you've teamed up with obviously some fantastic photographers of that generation as well. And you've got some amazing pictures in there as well to accompany the words.
Amazing photos, not just the racing, you know.
No,
I wanted
exactly.
to tell
Well,
the
there you
story
go.
of
Look.
what it was like.
Running up the Malvern Hills.
There you go. He's doing his Rocky 4 bit there. For those of you seen Rocky 4, when he's training, he's going up there. Where's that, Rob? You're running up
That's
mountains.
the
somewhere
Malvern. That's the Malvern Hills. That
Oh, it's the Malvern.
That
That's
was me.
regionally. Okay.
That was me doing.
You're looking absolute agony there.
It was hard work. I did used to train
Rocking
quite a
the
lot.
Fox paw gloves. Are they?
The Fox
they were
paw
pretty
gloves
cool.
and the Train with Wade.
There you go.
Oh, train with Brian Wade. God,
I mean, like the book for me was ace, but I kind of knew it all because me and you had travelled around talking about most of the career, and then I was
back
involved.
40 years.
And I was involved with it from like 87 onwards. So I kind of, I'm in the book as well.
You are in the book.
I do make it.
Do you?
I'm in there
You do. I
somewhere.
haven't got that far yet. I'm
I'm
doing
in
it
there
in
somewhere.
stages. Like I said, I'm saving
It's quality.
this one.
It's a really good read. And I knew
Revert back to it.
I knew it all before I read it, and it was it was good.
So you can order that at either theinsidelinebook.com, or if you can't remember that, go to robandrewsmx.com.
So you did say there's a distributor
and
down
I've
in
also
America.
recently, this is hot off the press, I've recently got a US distributor, which are called Autobooks-Aerobooks, and they're in Burbank in California. So if you're watching this from America, you can buy it from the US
So you haven't got to
side
have all
now,
those
so it'll
horrible
be a
duties
lot more
and taxes.
economical for postage.
See, when we said that, or we knew that we were getting you in, my initial thought was, well, that's really cool. But then I thought, well, actually, there's so much to talk about, but I don't want to do the book injustice by talking about it loads here when you can actually
Buy it and read it.
Yeah, buy it and read it, because there are obviously so many things we could talk about that's in this book, but then it's better off buying the book and reading it for yourself, because
100%.
yeah, as I said, it's got, there's Keith there, look. It is fantastic, no doubt about it. So with this whole racing thing now, then, like you said, you still follow it enough.
Yeah.
You're on a show for one.
Yeah.
So we're trying to keep you relevant.
I'm very flattered to be asked, because, you know, hey, it was a long time ago, and
Still got valid opinions, and we appreciate
absolutely
what you've done.
Flattered to still be remembered this long after.
What about, I mean, can you ever see yourself like distancing more from the sport, or do you think you've kind of found a nice balance now? You know,
some people
life.
walk away from motocross. They
And
stop
they walk away
motocross and they
completely,
don't
don't they?
give it a second thought. And then
Yeah.
other people just can't stop and carry on riding. I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm still interested in it, still think about it, still lie in bed at night sometimes and, you know, imagine myself going around a track somewhere. Still do that. So I still follow it, still interested. Don't go to the races much. I'll go to Supercross in America if I'm there,
Yeah.
and I can blag myself a free ticket. So
no crazy urge to jump on a bike though that you have to quash down.
No, not at all. That's
You say
now
you lie in
gone.
bed thinking about it, but you don't go, ooh, getting a bit, itchy.
No, not
Sorry
at all.
about that noise in the background. That's Wobb's getting latexed up.
I have had that for
Yeah.
long periods of time, and that's why I ended up buying this KTM in 2015, because you needed a bike there. There's some days you just want to go out and ride, but that seems to have now left my person, which is
That's
fine,
not a
and
bad thing.
I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah.
I don't feel an urge to ride. I did a little bit of riding at Glen Helen last October, the MXA ride day. So I didn't really enjoy it, if I'm
No,
honest.
you didn't.
I didn't really enjoy it, if I'm honest. I didn't enjoy it because I'm so rusty, I'm so useless at it, that I couldn't even get one corner right.
Yeah.
So
And then so you didn't want to challenge yourself or push yourself to get to
no,
get.
and I'm getting on a bit. I don't want to fall off. I don't want to
No.
hurt myself. I've escaped this sport largely injury-free, and it'd be nice to keep it that way.
Before we sign off with Wobbs is doing his pitch for the, mention the gloves. What's the future hold for Rob Andrews now? And what have you got any future plans, or are you just comfortable in life doing what you're doing? Obviously, you've got kids, so
I've got three
Guy-
daughters, but they're
yeah.
all grown up these days. I'm retired from proper work. I had a proper job for a long time. I retired back in 2014, not really knowing what I was going to do next. I didn't know I was going to write a book, but the opportunity or the idea for that just came out of the blue, and that was something that I immersed myself in for a couple of years. I play golf, I do bits of woodwork, do stuff around the house. I work on my daughter's house from time to time, that sort of thing. But at the moment, I haven't got a specific project. People have asked me about would I do a second book, but
what about will you say how did that idea come about? I need a piss.
The idea for the book came about because
let's carry it. Rob's nearly made it. Did we go past an hour? That's too much coffee. This is becoming obviously not an issue for me. It's part of our little quirky highlight of the show. Let's see if Wobbs can get through. Don't take that personally, Rob. Please don't take that personally. Wobbs has been.
Oh no, we're still shooting.
We're still shooting. Yeah, we're still rolling. Yeah,
this is the Rob and Jeff podcast.
Yeah, well, every so often, middle-aged men.
DocWob's been fired.
It's a good job we're not doing it late at night because he'd be going even more. How did this come about then? This spark, did you just wake up one morning with a coffee and a croissant and go, ding, I'm going to write a book?
No, it's an interesting story, actually. I think it's interesting because somehow the internet came along and somehow I ended up on Facebook. And somehow I ended up posting stuff on Facebook because I had a Rob Andrews website years ago, kind of before my Facebook days, where I would... Because occasionally I'd see a photo and I think, I know a story about that. Well, that photo would inspire some memories. And so I had a website where I got photos and the stories behind them. And then Facebook came along. And so I started posting things on Facebook. You just happened upon a picture and I'd say, I remember what happened that day. And I'd write something about it. And a guy called Steve Carty, a local guy, I've known him for years and years. He asked me if I could write something about how we prepared for overseas GPs. By that he meant when we raced at Carlsbad and Canada, and I guess he was thinking, well, what do we need to pack when we went over there?
Yeah.
So I kept putting it off, and he kept chasing me. So one night I started writing it down, and I remembered that prior to the Canadian GP in '86, I accidentally walked through a plate glass window 10 days before, and sliced through my forearm and cut my radial artery, and blood was spurting all over the ceiling in Tesco's, but essentially I nearly died on the floor of Tesco's. That's not an exaggeration.
No.
You cut the radial artery.
Whereas I die when we get to the tills now.
You're done. So,
by the way, you can die in other supermarkets, not just Tesco. Carry on.
Other supermarkets are available to die on the floor.
But that was Tesco's in Tewkesbury, and it was just an accident. I'd walked through this plate glass window. This was 10 days before. And so I went, eventually... Do you want to hear the gory bit of this? Or?
Yeah, well, not me personally, but our viewers probably will, and our listeners. Go on.
So this accidentally walked through what I thought was an open door, and it wasn't an open door, it was a window, and they'd moved a counter from in front of it, and it wasn't safety glass, and I just strolled towards the outside, bang, through this window, and it sliced through my forearm.
It's enough now.
Now I'm going to give you the full gory bit. You can edit this out if you want. So eventually, after the ambulance never came, the girls in Tesco's had got a tourniquet on me and blood still squirting out my arm, and eventually a doctor came and said,
just the doctor wandering around the place buying his groceries?
Or, no. The ambulance in Tewkesbury was on another call.
Oh, the ambulance is in Tewkesbury.
The ambulance in Tewkesbury, the solitary ambulance. And so eventually, after me saying, like I'm dying here, literally, feeling faint from blood loss, like a pool of blood, eventually they arranged for a doctor from the local surgery to come down with his bag. And so he came down, and I'm on the floor of Tesco's, and he said, you've severed your artery, I need to clamp off the ends. And so he got a pair of forceps, those scissor type things, and he thrust it into my arm and he poked around trying to find the end of the artery. And he couldn't find it because it had retracted up in my forearm. And so he then got a scalpel and he cut a 40 mil long incision in
on the floor of Tesco's.
On the floor of Tesco's, in order to get more access to be able to force the forceps in there and clamp it off, which he did. And then he used a second pair of forceps to get the other end of the artery, and he did that on the floor of Tesco's, and there was no anaesthetic. And he said to me, "This is going to." it's hurt. It's going to hurt. And he was right.
It's going to be.
But
It's going to be a sharp scratch. That's what they say.
It's going to smart a little.
But he saved my life.
Yeah.
And I'm there on the floor of Tesco's with 2 scissors hanging out my arm, thinking, I'm going to Canada in a week.
Thinking I didn't pay for them.
And so they went to Cheltenham Hospital and, cut a long story short, had surgery and they put it all back together. And the next morning I woke up and I got my arm in plaster. And then a couple of days later, I go back to see the surgeon and I say, you do know I'm a professional motocross rider and I'm kind of up there in the World Championship and I'd like to go to Canada, please. And he said, I can't recommend it because like it's only, 10 days time or 7 days time. He said, it probably won't be healed. It could open up again, but I know why you want to go and I can't stop you. And so I went and I cut the plaster off on the Friday night at Chatsworth in Canada and I raced the GP and I got a 10th and 6 points, and those 6 points all made the difference at the end of the year.
See, that's
there you go.
Motocross people. And fair play, because the doctor, probably the minute you said it was a motocrosser, he probably went, oh, wow.
Oh, well, that explains a lot.
Bugger. Then he's going to do it anyway, even if I say no.
But the reason I told that story is because I'd started writing, you'd asked me how did the book come into being? Well, I'd started thinking about this, how we prepare for overseas GPs, and remembered that story, and then remembered the fact that Alec Wright, God bless his soul, even though I was on the factory Kawasaki team and was ahead of Kurt at the time, he told me I'd got to pay for it all. And those two things. And I thought to myself, I can't waste this on a Facebook post. This really needs to be in a book. And so that was the trigger moment that made me think, no, there's this and all the countless other stories. It needs to be in a book.
There you go. Now, see, if that story alone, like you said, it's all in there. So that's that story. I mean, that's not really.
How much are they?
Motocross, yeah.
They're £40, and they're a penny more than Thorpe's book. But but for the people that say how much, you have to realise that most books are just black and print's expensive, but most books are just black and white on cheap paper with a couple of colour sections in the centre. You've all seen them, whereas that is 416 pages of colour, and that's why it costs a bit more.
It costs a bit more, and you can say that you beat 4P. I mean, you've beaten him anyway, but now you can say you've beaten him on price as well. Well, not beat him on price, beat him the other way. Go on, one. just beat him by a penny. You're still beating him.
When David released his book, I mean, I spoke to David quite a lot. We conferred on it before he was putting his together. So we're good pals. And I saw him at Foxhill, and I said, "You've come out. You've undercut me by a penny." And Thorpe just said to me, "You got to let it go, Rob."
And he's not going to. And we'll wrap it up there. I'm just going to say one more time. Look at that. Racer X, David Coombs saying it's a motocross masterpiece. So
it's good.
Rob, thanks for coming in. Absolute pleasure. Again, thanks to the guys at Talon. Remember, if you want to get a discount, use the Torq 15.
Docbright gloves.
Yeah, keeping
me
fresh. Rob, hopefully see you at an event soon enough. Like I say, not going to many of them. Hopefully you'll be at...
I'll be at Foxhill and Farley.
This guy's event.
Foxhill and Farley.
Yeah, superb. Always a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for coming in. They're a well-educated man. We like that.
Exactly.
Makes us, brings us down a peg. That's it for this one. We don't know who we've got coming on next, but as always, we are lining them up. And hope you enjoyed this one. And we'll be seeing you. And hopefully you'll be listening to us in a couple of weeks' time. So thanks for that. If you've got any questions, obviously just hit us up on social media. We're on all the major ones. But if you want to email in, it's info@torqmoto@gmail.com.
Oh, we've got some new merch coming.
I was going to say, have you got final words to say?
We've got some new merch, yeah. We just had a deal with Kex. So Kex are going to be making our new T-shirt. You don't even know this, do you?
No, I don't know.
There you go.
Brilliant.
So, yeah, we've had some shirts made. We thought, we're a quality production. We'll go with a quality T-shirt.
The production is quality, thanks to Danny and John and whatever.
I thought we'd do that. So we will be having those. I'm guessing there'll be a few weeks. But
we need to polish up our bit. But
and then we can maybe give one to each. Maybe we can give one to each guest or something. We can go proper generous.
Yeah, we could. Okay, we'll leave it there for now, and we'll catch up with you soon. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.